When I was arriving in Dubai last night, I saw an advertisement for one of the major international banks, and it said tomorrow's exports will be transmitted, not transported. And that really is the theme of what we're going to look at now. We've had a lot of focus on railways, maritime routes, key dimensions of ensuring that the Silk Road is at the center of Eurasian business that is digital connectivity. And in this session, we're going to look at why it's so important to explore the impact of the smart Silk Road. And to do that, I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by Barbara Maynard, who is chair of the Digital Economy Task Force, UNESCAP, and professor at the University of Hong Kong. She's an expert on the digital economy in Asia, and also by Nurlan Kusanov, who is Chief Executive Officer of Astana International Financial Center Authority in Kazakhstan. Welcome, both of you. I'd like to begin, Barbara, by putting the digital Silk Road in perspective. You're an expert in Hong Kong and Bangkok and China. From the Chinese point of view, just how real is the digital Silk Road and how important is it?
Thank you. I'd like to go back and talk about the Silk Road as a whole. President Xi Jinping announced the One Belt, One Road in March last year. And basically, it comprises two routes. There is a northern land route, which goes from Xi'an via Mongolia, Kazakhstan, and then Moscow, and then it gets to Venice. So that's the northern land route. And then there is the maritime road, which starts in Fuzhou on the east coast of China. And then it goes around the Gulf of Thailand, and it goes into the South China Sea. It goes through, go to the Indian Ocean, and goes to East Africa, the Suez Canal, and goes around Northern Europe, and it also ends up in Venice. So Venice is the end point of the One Belt, One Road. So this was announced in March, and it was received with great enthusiasm, particularly in Asia. 6 months later, I think the Chinese government realized that they were wrong to call it One Belt, One Road, because they find that, in fact, it's a number of belts and a number of roads. There has been already a refinement on the road, the belt, the land part. We have identified so far 5 or 6 economic corridors. The main one is the Euro-Asian Economic Corridor, which goes through Kazakhstan. And it comes down into Pakistan, it goes to the Indochina, Southeast Asia, it goes to Myanmar, Bangladesh. I'm sure there are just as many maritime sub-roads which have not yet been defined. So about 6 months ago, the Chinese authorities passed out word that they don't want to call it the One Belt, One Road anymore. They want to call it the Belt and Road Initiative, because that's more correct. It's an initiative, and there are many belts and roads. So initially, this project, this initiative, did not mention very much the digital. They talk about infrastructure, which includes the telecom, the internet access, but it's more in terms of infrastructure. It was about in the summer of last year when the Minister of Cybersecurity of China went public to say that it includes also the digital Silk Road, because, and I'm quoting him, the possibilities there are unlimited. And so that's just setting the scene. But just one more point, that China does not see this purely either as soft or hard infrastructure, but also as a flow for culture, for ideas, for education. And it's sort of the idea that if I want to be rich, I want you to be rich as well, because otherwise you're going to give me trouble. So that's the more philosophical thinking behind the Belt and Road Initiative. But today, our focus is on the digital side of this Belt and Road.
Nurlan, I'd like to come to you, if I may, because I think we're probably going to talk about China and its soft power in the area a little bit more later on in this session. But we talked there about the unlimited potential and opportunity that China sees. From your perspective, from the Kazakhs' perspective, how do you see the opportunities that you have for technology in the Silk Road?
Thank you. First of all, I just wanted to remind that 500 years ago, 700 years ago, many centuries ago, we played, Central Asia and Kazakhstan, we played crucial role in global trade, because that time Silk Road was one of the most important global route and the center of trade. Of course, today we in Kazakhstan and Central Asian countries is a different situation. We are not that sophisticated today in the global value chain, but we see the leapfrog opportunity, because our session is about digitalization of everything, of not only financial services, not only trade services, but as we try to develop this idea that today the digitalization will touch all, in future digitalization will touch all the industries, and it's not only about payment business, it's not only about banking business. We believe that it will change dramatically the social services, healthcare, education. Of course, today Kazakhstan is very humbled country in the middle of Central Asia. We know future. We don't know future, but we know that in future we can play a very interesting role in building this initiative of Chinese government, which is One Belt, One Road. As Barbara said, we have to give a new name of this initiative. We believe that we can become a testing ground for many interesting startups.
It's interesting. You talk about, I mean, clearly there is a huge amount of potential here. You talk about becoming, a FinTech hub. But I'm interested in the mechanics of that. I mean, how do you even start with that? You're a country where not that many people at the moment even have a bank account. How do you make that leap into becoming somewhere that would attract global interest?
I think the beauty of disruptive things that nobody knows where they're coming from. So we cannot prove that we will become the FinTech valley or FinTech heaven in the future. But we believe that we can create enough space for some companies, and them not necessarily them to be in Kazakhstan. So we, with the digitalization, with the technology, we can call companies from San Francisco, from Singapore, from Dublin, to think about some testing, to think about testing some technology in Kazakhstan. For example, payment system. Everybody talk about blockchain can disrupt the payment system, but nobody really making it on the country level to have one good structure with practical implementations. Yeah, we saw a lot of initiatives in this space, but nobody really is trying to do it with a very well organized, structured level.
I just want to remind the audience that I would like to throw this open to questions. So you can ask questions on the app. You can ask questions on the iPad. You can also just go to these podium, and I will be taking, I'll be keeping an eye open. So if you want to go to the podium or put up your hand and travel over there, then I'll be able to direct your questions to our guests today. So please do get involved. Barbara, I wanted to ask you, from the perspective of China and the ASEAN countries, how attractive is the idea of FinTech centers in Kazakhstan or elsewhere in this region? And what do they need to do? What are the opportunities? What do they need to do to try and attract that business?
Just the magnitude. First of all, let me clarify the magnitude of the Belt and Road initiatives. It covers 2/3 of the world's population, 1/3 of the world's trade, and 1/3 of the world's GDP. So just the population alone, if you cover 2/3 of the world population, much of that is going to be the new middle class, the rising consumers. The market potential is huge. I actually don't think, with due respect, I don't think that any particular place will emerge as a fintech center. Singapore, in Asia, Singapore is probably the leader in fintech, because if you emerge as a fintech center, you need a lot of talent, you need the whole ecosystem, you need innovation, you need the funding, and most importantly, you need the right regulatory environment. Let me just compare Hong Kong and Singapore. Both would like to be fintech centers. But right now, Singapore is way ahead, not because Hong Kong hasn't got a talent or the ecosystem, but because of its own internal political sensitivities. Hong Kong cannot develop the right governance structure to make it happen, whereas Singapore could move more quickly with its legislation. In particular, I'm thinking of equity crowdfunding, which is a very important part of their fintech. But I don't think it's going to be one country, because even in America, fintech is happening in Silicon Valley, it's happening in Israel, it's happening in New York, it's happening in Boston. Is where the creative talent is located, and then it sort of spreads. So this is my view.
Nola, you were talking about the idea that Kazakhstan could be a fintech hub, because it's a relatively small and enclosed market, and it could be a test market. Do you think that you could make it appeal to larger countries like China? How would you go about doing that? How would the idea of test markets work in the CIS?
Yeah, first of all, I agree with Barbara that there will be no only one fintech hub in the world, say in 15, 20 years. And in Kazakhstan, we don't want to say that we want to build the only fintech in Kazakhstan. As I explained, we can leverage on our neighbors, China, Russia, India, and Middle East. And we're still very neutral, so thanks to our leadership, we're very accepted by any country in the region with any religion and with any political views and so on and so on. So we can leverage on our neutralistic nature. In the same time, we can be a very reliable partner, and for IT companies or for IT leaders or IT geeks, we can build the sufficient environment, and again, not necessarily them to be there in Kazakhstan. Of course, we're improving ourselves in terms of creating special environment for talents. Of course, we're trying to bring more talents into the country, but we can offer something very practical, such as testing, and we can help those companies to enter the Russian market, Chinese market, and Central Asian market.
One thing that strikes me immediately is education. I mean, clearly, you need to have people who are experts in this field. Are these things? Do you want to create this internally, and if so, what are you doing to try and make that happen?
Education is part of our agenda for next decades, and last year, President announced the 5 institutional reforms and 100 concrete steps, and President and government very much focused on changing the institutional environment, do institutional changes, and education plays a key role. We probably, most of the people in this room today, they know about Nazarbayev University, one of the newest initiative, which is world-class university in the middle of Astana. We also have IT university in Almaty. We have a joint university with Kazakh-British University with British institutions. So we pay a lot of attention to education. But important thing that, again, if today one guy in the rural area of Kazakhstan wants to become IT engineer, so
Yes.
for him it's not necessary to travel even to Astana. He can do it online, and he can apply for various courses and programs online.
Now, one thing that's very important, we are getting a flurry of questions in on the iPad, and I know that there's a lot of interest in FinTech, so do keep them coming. And as I say, do go to the podium if you'd like to ask a question. But this, I'd really like to ask you both this, because we've had this question a couple of times, and it's about English language. There is quite a low adoption of the English language in CIS countries. Is that going to really hinder trade and investment, and particularly in FinTech? Barbara, what do you think? I mean, Singapore has got a lot of, a high uptake of English language. How key is it?
You know, from experience, I'm a co-founder of a platform called SME, Global SME Link, where it links SMEs globally, within the country globally, with chambers of commerce, with development agencies, buyers, sellers, investors. We started with saying, let's just use English. And then it worked to some extent. And then it doesn't work. So we were looking at Kazakhstan, and we came to the conclusion that if we were to do it, it has to be at least English and Russian. We might not be able to go to every country's second language or the main language, but certainly the major countries have to be included, the language of the major countries, particularly for this part of the world. But I don't know, for those of you who are, techies, you would know that translation technologies have become so advanced that this should no longer be a big issue, and probably in a couple of years it will be automatic for the major languages. So I would say English, yes, but be flexible, because you may not need it in the domestic language, but you probably may need it in Russian, because that's a lingua franca of the region.
Now, I want to bring up another area of technology which is very pertinent to the Silk Road, and this is the whole area of artificial intelligence and robotics, which should move seamlessly on, and the use of those in areas such as mining, and also to some extent in manufacturing as well. What impact are they going to have on the countries along the Silk Road, on the CIS, and beyond, in fact? If we can just begin by looking at mining in particular, what does that do to jobs?
Again, currently, it's difficult to say that Kazakhstan would add value in the current circumstances to the artificial intelligence or to robotic immediately. But taking into account the 15, 30 years perspective, and leveraging, sorry for repeating, but leveraging on Silk Road and on our neighbors, we can try to attract those technologies to the country. Not necessarily we have to invent them in Kazakhstan today, but we can become one of the best consumer of artificial intelligence in future, for example. And also talking about artificial intelligence, for this need, for this development, you need data storage, you need,
yes.
You need more energy and smarter energy. And you know that we're hosting next year Expo 2017, and it's more about future of energy. But we believe that we can position ourselves in future also as a data center hub, because we have enough coal, we have enough gas, we have a potential in alternative energy sources, and we believe that with building data hubs and data centers in Kazakhstan, we can play that angle as well.
Nurlan, we're really talking about leapfrogging here, aren't we? Yes. We're talking about leapfrogging over a lot of areas that more developed countries have had in place. And in a way, do you think that gives you an advantage in that you don't have to dismantle old technology, you just don't have it there at all?
Yeah, but I think one of the advantage today in Kazakhstan that we can create the environment where we can have enough people who can think out of the box, not necessarily only in private sector, but in government, in other quasi-sovereign institution. But in the same time, we're still very much centralized country, and if there will be initiative coming from president or government, and we say that we want to achieve that particular goal and that particular stage, particular date, we can deliver it.
Do we have any questions in the floor?
Shall I
you just
add a bit there?
if you just put up your hand if you've got a question in the floor. I can't see it, so it's quite difficult to see. Lovely. Could you just make your way over to the podium, and I will come back to you, Barbara, on that.
Hi.
Hi.
So, my name is Thaer Sabri. I head up a trade body in Europe called the Electronic Money Association. It's a trade body for new payment service providers. It's part of the FinTech area. And I just wanted maybe to maybe shed a little bit of light on what does work in terms of a greenfield site. And I think maybe reiterating what you just said, which is, it's true if you want to have a successful FinTech sector, you need the skill set and you need a number of other things. But sometimes having a greenfield, the absence of legacy technology and legacy systems means that you can achieve quite a lot in a very short space of time. In payments, we have one unique example, which was in Kenya, the M-Pesa system, which succeeded and has been very difficult to reproduce anywhere else in the world. So I think whatever opportunities exist in Kazakhstan could be addressed in a FinTech way. And you don't really need to have a very advanced infrastructure to get started. So I just wanted to add that. It's not a question, but I hope you'll let me make my comments.
Thank you. We were talking earlier, actually, about Kenya. I'd just like to tie those two things together, because what we're seeing is potentially a huge shift in what the workforce is required to do. I mean, it's quite seismic, isn't it, when you think about whether manufacturing is actually going to be replaced by robotics. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on that.
Well, it's quite this is a big topic.
It's a big topic, and I'm afraid we don't have a huge amount of time for it. But
because let me maybe give you some statistics that a report issued at the World Economic Forum in Davos in January said that 9 million jobs will be destroyed in the top 15 developed economies in the next 5-10 years. And only 2 million new jobs will be created. This is in developed economies, and they may be right, they may be wrong. But what is of great concern to me, because I'm a development economist by training, and I have been involved in in the development of many countries in Asia, is that the tremendous success of the growth of East Asian economies, Southeast Asian economies, has been based on one model, which is get surplus farm labor, put them in factories, they make cheap T-shirts, then everybody prospered, and then you go off and meet and produce electronics, and then the cheap T-shirts go to the next country. That model is now being challenged. I mean, it's taken into countries like Ethiopia, but automation is happening so fast with the price of robots going down. So, and my view, and I'm not a pessimist because I have an optimistic side, which I'm also happy to share. But my view is that that model doesn't work, but the world has no alternative model for development. So how do we bring the emerging countries to the next stage? Even Bangladesh, which, as you know, is a big producer of low-cost garments, and that employs over 3-4 million women. They're introducing robots into factories, but robots plus artificial intelligence is affecting not only factory workers, assembly line operations, but every single bit, lawyers, doctors, accountants, mid-management, and that's a prospect that we are aware of, but we don't yet know the solution. And I think
Barbara, I just want to see, is there another question from the floor? We don't have very much time. If you just go to the podium there, thank you very much. They'll bring a little light up onto you so that you can see what you're doing. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Behnam. I have a question for Nurlan. I heard a lot about the promotion of Islamic banking in Kazakhstan, and it's not a secret that Kazakhstan is the first country among CIS countries who accepted Islamic banking legislation. How do you see the future of Sharia-compliant financing and Islamic banking through Astana International Financial Center? And do you see any possibilities to digitalize Sharia-compliant banking through Astana International?
I guess there will be next session about Astana International Financial Center, and my boss, Governor Kilimbetov, he will be talking about our prospects. And of course, Islamic finance is part of our agenda. But your question about whether it's possible to digitalize Sharia-compliant instruments, I'm not sure it's a right approach to say that we should digitalize that type of instrument in finance or different type of instrument. I think digitalization and disruption will come to the industry in general, and it will challenge fundamental financial relationships in global world. So I don't want to distinguish that the digital currency or digital startups would would give benefits only to Islamic instruments or non-Islamic instruments or other type of instruments. I believe that digitalization is much more fundamental. It changed the whole landscape. And as we discuss here, it's not on. We talk about fintech not for the sake of developing fintech themselves, but it will change a lot health system, education. It will change a lot transportation, trade, and it will dramatically change the way we communicate. And I think the general idea of leapfrogging is really to change a lot in ordinary, in our routine and in ordinary things. And Barbara mentioned that there will be no approach only one country can benefit. So we do not want Kazakhstan. We do not want to position Kazakhstan or Hong Kong only two hubs on the Silk Road with the fintech.
And just before we go, a final thought then on this idea of globalization, because I think what you're both saying really is that while you would very much like Kazakhstan and from China's perspective, the Silk Road belt to become a hub, this really has to be a global model, doesn't it? It doesn't work to be as a country by country model.
I think we were traditionally nomads in Kazakhstan, yes. And we were traditionally very much globalistic and cosmopolitan. And today, our advantage, again, we position ourselves as neutral cosmopolitan nation, and in the same time, we strongly believe that in current situation, we are in the right time with the right people, and we believe that again, another thing, we have the resources, financial resources, we have enough resource to maybe jointly with Singaporean authorities, maybe jointly with Hong Kong authorities to finance startups in Silicon Valley or in New Zealand and come up with something interesting together.
Nurlan, I love that you've taken it back to the nomads of Kazakhstan to finish it off with. I think that is a very appropriate place to leave it. I know that there's a lot more questions in the room, but I'm afraid we're out of time and we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you both very much indeed. It's really fascinating stuff. And please do stay in your seats. We have the final session of the day, Building a Financial Hub. So please do stay with us for that. Thank you.
Please remain in your seats for the next session.